And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello everyone, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist John Cowan. Thanks for joining us for the aviation forecast. We'll start out looking at flying weather for Wednesday morning. As you can see, we have three distinct areas of IFR across the state, mainly from the southern Bering up across the North Slope and areas of the northern Panhandle and Gulf Coast. Now that's brought to us thanks in part to a pretty large storm over the Arctic that's brought very impactful weather across the state. Over the last couple of days, as you can see, we have widespread marginal conditions across the interior thanks to snow showers and low ceilings across that area. Looking at Wednesday afternoon, you can see our next low is starting to work its way into the southeastern Bering, bringing IFR conditions up into Bristol Bay. Still some lingering marginal conditions across the central and eastern interior, and plenty of IFR up on the North Slope as well. The Panhandle is starting to improve by Wednesday afternoon, just some marginal conditions across most of that area with IFR mainly reserved for the higher elevations near the Canadian border. As we get into Thursday morning, VFR actually across most of the Panhandle, although we do have our next system again that's worked its way into Bristol Bay that's now bringing IFR across Kodiak Island. And portions of the southern Alaska range still hanging onto that IFR across the North Slope. Finally, by Thursday afternoon, IFR conditions coming back into the northern Gulf Coast and the northern Panhandle. Still plenty of marginal conditions across most of the West Coast and still that lingering IFR up on the North Slope. And as you might expect for Wednesday, with those snow showers still lingering across the interior, we do expect marginal conditions for most of the passes. Anaktuvik and Adigan both marginal for Wednesday. As we go down towards the Alaska range, looking at Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both MVFR all day. Same story up in Rainy Pass, as well as Windy and Isabel Pass, all MVFR with those lingering snow showers and lower ceilings. Coming down over towards Mentasta Pass, we're going to start the day off VFR, however, transitioning to MVFR later on in the afternoon as that weather works its way in from the northwest. Coming down to Tanita Pass, we'll start the day marginal and then improve to VFR actually in the afternoon, and then down towards Portage Pass, VFR all day. Over towards the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White Passes, both IFR, unfortunately all day with snow in that area. Let's take a look at our freezing levels. As you can see, our freezing level has made it down to the surface across most of mainland Alaska as well as the northern Panhandle. Freezing levels increased to around 2,000 feet over most of the southern Panhandle, the Alaska Peninsula, and then increased gradually up to about 8,000 feet as we make our way over towards the western Aleutians. We have widespread areas of occasional moderate icing. Expect above 6,000 feet for that across most of the Bering. In the central, interior, and north slope, up above 3,000 feet is where we would expect those icing conditions. Let's take a look at our jet stream. Very strong jet over the central Bering Sea coming down into the central Aleutians as well. That core of 145 knots decreases to around 110 knots or so as we get over the Aleutians itself. And then over the eastern half of the state, some stronger winds aloft, around 65 knots or so, not too terribly impactful. Coming down to about 9,000 feet, you can see we still have about 30 to 40 knot winds at that level across the northeastern quadrant of the state. However, coming back to the Bering, you can see we still have a core of about 65 to 70 knot winds over the central Aleutians. And then down to 3,000 feet, that core of strong winds is still there, around 55 knots or so as it crosses the Aleutians. And then you'll notice up in the northeastern quadrant of the state, we do have some very strong low-level winds across the eastern Arctic slope over Barter Island, around 50 knots in that area. And as you might expect, that is where we will see some turbulence. Expect occasional moderate turbulence from the surface up to about 3,000 feet in that area. Over Kotzebue Sound, around 4,000 feet is what we're looking at for occasional moderate turbulence. And then across the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, we're looking at surface to about 4,000 feet on that turbulence. And as we come over towards Kodiak Island in the southern Alaska range, that increases to about 6,000 feet. And that'll wrap up our aviation forecast. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist John Cowan. Thanks for joining us.